From sea to shining sea, America's favorite uncle, Bumpkin Bob.
Hey y'all, this is Bumpkin Bob coming to you from the Bumpkin Bob Show here in the Bumpkin Media Studios in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. We're going to come to you every week, try to give you a little entertainment. We're going to tell you some job site tales, not just my own. We'd like to hear yours. We're going to give you some tales from my childhood and adulthood, as we do. Bring some tales in about some family members. And we're also going to give you some opinions on things that are going on today. Going to talk a little bit here and there about your beloved Arkansas Razorbacks. We might touch on some political things. Don't want to get everybody all upset and bent out of shape, but we're going to touch on those things from time to time. We want y'all to be aware of that. Now, last Sunday was Father's Day. Hope everybody had a good one. I had a good Father's Day myself. Got to spend lunch with my daughter and her husband and both of my sons. Had a good time. It's always something I like to do. And kind of keeping in theme with it being Father's Day last weekend, I thought this week for our first tale from like my childhood that also involves adulthood, my daughter's childhood. We'd tell you a little story about my dad, and to give you a little background about this story, my dad worked for Petit Jean Electric Co-ops out of Clinton, probably starting in the late 50s, early 60s. I'm not exactly sure when he went to work for the co-ops, but in and around 66 or 67, he went to work for Arkansas Electric Co-ops, a statewide organization running a line crew. And basically what he did was he moved us all over the state wherever he happened to be working. Now, in and around 1969, he got promoted to field superintendent. And when he did, they asked him to move closer to Little Rock so that he could be in the office one day a week. Or 2 days a week, whatever they needed him to be. And the rest of the time he visited his line crews and substation crews. After we moved from Clinton, probably a couple of times a year, I don't remember it being any more often than that, we would make that trip, usually from Little Rock, up Highway 65 to Clinton to see my Granny and Grandpa Griggs. And usually we'd go visit Granny and Grandpa, and then we'd make the short drive from Clinton up to Denard to visit my Grandma Parks and Parks' family. Sometimes we'd even go up to Leslie. But every time we would make that trip between Clinton and Denard, there's a big green sign on the side of Highway 65 that said Natural Bridge of Arkansas. Just intrigued the living shit out of me. I always wanted to go there. So every time we drive by it, I'd say, Dad, I want to go to that Natural Bridge of Arkansas. And he'd say, same answer every time. I'm not going to pay money to see something I played on as a kid. Now, that was his story that he played on it. I don't know that he did. We'll have to ask one of my aunts one of these days if he actually played on that bridge when he was a kid or if he just pulled my leg. Anyway, we'll fast forward to the early 2000s when my daughter was just about 9 or 10 years old. Well, every year, my dad had retired from the electric co-ops, built a house on Lake Conway, and we'd take her down there and she'd spend a week with him and his wife. Well, we went the weekend to pick her up, and as soon as I walked through the front door, she's like, Daddy, guess what we did this weekend? I said, I don't know, baby girl, what'd you do? She said, Grandpa took me to see the Natural Bridge of Arkansas. Well, I looked at my dad, and he gave me one of these, kind of hiding his face, because he knew what he did, and I'm pretty sure he did it on purpose, but we jawed at each other for a little bit and had a good laugh about it. And that being said, I'm 52 years old, and I've still never seen that damn Natural Bridge of Arkansas. But what I want y'all to do is that's just a place here in Arkansas that everybody probably needs to see. So if you get a chance, make that trip over there to Clinton and go see that natural bridge. We jumped on. They do have a website. They're open during the summer, just like a lot of the touristy things here in Arkansas are. But go over and see that natural bridge of Arkansas and tell them people, look at them and look at that bridge and go, it's just a big rock. Bobby Dean played on that when he was a kid. Now, they won't have a clue what you're talking about, but I will, and I'll get a good chuckle out of it. And maybe you can get them to contact the Bumpkin Bob Show, and we'll go over and see that bridge one day and get it on film. Now, that'd be pretty cool there. Anyway, that's just a little story about my dad, and we lost Dad in 2014, and so to my sisters, I know they have a hard time on Father's Day, but he's up there with us, and I'm sure he's looking down, and I want to wish him and all the dads out there happy Father's Day. Now, the next segment we want to get into is our job site tale for the week. And now, this is a job site tale because it is a job site, but it doesn't actually involve me. Set the background up on this little story. My daughter and son-in-law got tickets to see the Arkansas Naturals play. Now, that's our minor league ball club here in Northwest Arkansas. So, we went over there to watch the Naturals play, and we're just sitting there in the stands, having us a good time and watching the ball game. And this little old kid, and honestly, I could not tell you what position he played. It's been so long, I don't remember his name or what position in the field he played, but every time he'd come out of the dugout and get in the batter's circle there, get warmed up to for his turn at bat, this little old gal would come over there. She'd stand right against that front row up there. She had on her little short shorts, a little cut-off tank top, and now don't nobody take offense to this. She is pretty white trashy looking. But she come up there and she just talk that kid up. And I guess she's found her one that she really liked. And boy, she just laying it on thick. Well, everybody was kind of rumbling about it and carrying on. And next thing I knew, my little old daughter, who pretty much says most things that pop into her head, as her husband can attest to, I'm sure, popped up and said, "Hey!" And that little old girl looked back there and she goes, "He don't come down the strip club and bother you when you're working. How about you let him alone so the rest of us can enjoy the game?" I thought I was going to die. I mean, everybody around us just cracked up, thought it was funnier than shit, and it was pretty funny. And I thought, boy, there's going to be a fight. That little old gal, my daughter's fixing to go at it. And but she just looked all huffy and stomped off and never came back. But it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I got a buddy that I work with a lot that he brings it up all the time. He truly loves that story. And I don't think he's actually even ever met my daughter, but he just, from the things I've told him about her, he just thinks she's probably one of the greatest things ever. And we'll get into some other stuff that she's done here and there. It just, sometimes she amazes me when she gets to rolling on some stuff. But that's our job site tale, because that was a job site. They pay them boys to play minor league ball. I know they don't pay them very much, but it is a job site tale. While we're on the subject of job site tales, I want y'all, while you're here on our website, to hit that email link and email me your job site tale. I want to hear it. I don't care if you work in an office or on a road crew or work down at Walmart, or if you're on a chain gang. If you've got access to an internet and you're working on a chain gang, something funny happens, I want to hear about it. We'll read it here on air. We ain't scared. So send us your job site tales and let us know what's going on in your world. I know without a doubt that funny things happen at other people's job sites just as well as they do mine. And I'm I am a commercial electrician and I work mostly on commercial job sites, but I don't care, again, whether you're an office worker, working a doctor's office. If something funny happens, send it in to us and we'll try to read it here on air, because I've got a lot of job site tales, but I don't have that many job site tales. So we'd really, really like to hear yours too. So make sure you hit that email link and get those out to us. Again, I'm going to touch on the day tripping on the email trip links there too. You know, tell us some good places to eat. Just out of the way places. I don't know how to put it. Just anything. And it doesn't have to just be eating establishment. I mean, if there's some cool stuff in the state of Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Missouri that you think us and our viewers need to see, you know, send us a link. We'll try to get over there, especially if it's where we can run from Siloam one day over there and get back. That would be awesome. Another thing I'd like to talk about today is I saw a TV show the other day, and it was actually on PBS. And for people that know me, they know that I watch PBS a lot. I have since I was a kid. And there's some pretty interesting things on PBS. It's a good station. And most of the time it's AETN's what I'm watching, but all the PBS stations carry a lot of the same stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, you can usually find this. But I was watching a show the other day, and I'm not sure how much on this broadcast we can say as far as telling people's names or their show names. So I'm going to leave that stuff off this time and until we kind of get a better feel for what we're doing. But it was the television host, who's pretty well known, especially here in Arkansas, had his great aunt with him, I think, or aunt, I'm not sure, it was an elderly lady. And they were talking about making hominy. Now, it got me to thinking, it's like, how many people actually know what hominy is, and how many people actually know how to make it? I mean, hominy is something you make by soaking corn, usually field corn, in an alkaline solution, which is usually lye or lime that they use. And it causes the husk to soften and burst and the inside to swell up, and then they have to rinse it and do a bunch of stuff to it. But it's like, how many people actually know what hominy is and how to make it? Well, probably not very many. And part of the reason for that is we've lost that old-timey ways of doing things and passing things down to our kids. We don't do that anymore. You know, and I'm sure there are skills and traditions that are being lost today because they're not passed down. So I want to talk a little bit about today about doing those kind of stuff. It's like, and I'll just tell another little tale here that kind of indirectly involves my dad. Again, kind of going back to Father's Day, talking a little bit about fathers and fathers teaching their kids something. We moved over to Bearville in the late 90s for a little bit. And there's a place over there called Carr's Dry Goods. And to me, it was the neatest place I'd ever been in. I mean, is a multi-story building there on the city square in Bearville. Not sure how long it was actually open. If I had my guess, probably since the early 1900s. If there's anybody watching this that is from Bearville or that knows, send us that information. Let us know how long Carr's was open. And I'm sure anybody, if you're watching this and you're from Bearville and you were born and raised there and you're over 30 years old, you know exactly what I'm talking about Carr's Dry Goods. Neatest place I ever been into. They had, of course, as you walked in the front door, if memory serves me right, they had a bunch of folds of fabric and sewing patterns and that kind of stuff for quilting and sewing. But then as you got towards the back of the store and went upstairs or down in the basement, they also had clothing. And some of this clothing had been in there so long it had faded. But their racks were literally packed. You had to take stuff off the rack, shirts, bib overalls, bib coveralls, just to see what size they were, because the stuff was packed in there so tight. But they had Wrangler jeans that still had the leather patch on the back of pocket instead of the plastic ones today. And anybody that knows me knows that I've wore Wrangler jeans since I was old enough to wear long breeches, and that's all I've ever wore and ever will wear. It used to drive my mom crazy because the only place she could find them was West Department Store. And when West went out of business, it's tough then really to find them. But they had Levi's that had been in there so long, the red tag on the pocket had faded almost white. And I don't mean it had a white tag. I mean there were still hints of red in it. I mean you could tell that it had faded. They sold Rodeo King hats, cowboy hats, and they had them stacked on the shelving up above on everything, and had a 1/4 inch dust on top of them. It was just crazy how long some of this stuff had been in there. But I ended up wandering over to the boot department, looking around, and most of y'all that know, I mean, on the weekends I wear cowboy boots almost 24/7, but during the week I wear work boots just like the rest of you. And I usually wear a lace-up top work boot. So I'm in there looking around. They got some nice-looking work boots. Don't remember what brand they were. They had like an 8 or 10 inch high top on these work boots. And of course, they had hooks instead of eyes. Well, I slipped my cowboy boots off and slipped a pair of those on. And I threw my foot up there on the bench. Instead of sitting down, I reached down one-handed and grabbed the shoelaces and pulled them tight and laced my boot because it had them hooks on it. And I didn't even realize anybody was watching me. But the little old elderly man that was the salesman there in the boot department, he's like, hey, how did you do that? And I'm like, how did I do what? He said, how did you lace your boots like that? And I started laughing and chuckling. I said, I just speed laced them because they got hooks. And he goes, where did you learn to do that? And I said, well, that comes from having a lineman as a father. I mean, when my dad was still climbing for a living, he wore boots that had 18, 20-inch tops on them and hooks all the way, and trying to lace them things one hook at a time would take you forever in the morning. So you speed lace them is what I call it. And he said, my grandson lives with us, and he's a lineman for Carroll Electric, and I've never seen him lace his boots like that. And I said, well, it's pretty sad that somebody hadn't showed him. I said, whether it's a fellow lineman or somebody who just knows how to do it, ought to show him how to do that. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's like, that's a silly little thing, just something I learned from my dad that I still do today. You'll see me when I put on my work boots. I throw my boot up on a chair, throw my foot up on a chair, reach down one-handed, grab my shoelaces and flip them back and forth, boom, boots laced up. No, just that quick. And it's silly, and I know it's silly, but it's just something my dad showed me. And it's that kind of stuff that is lost on today's youth, I think. Nobody teaches them anything. That being said, it's like if a bunch of your family's getting together this weekend making hominy, invite somebody over. Say, hey, my grandma and my mom's coming over this weekend, and we're actually going to make hominy. Invite somebody over. Hell, they might like to learn how to make it too. That being said, I got something I want to say to my Griggs family. By the way, my last name's Griggs, in case anybody didn't catch that just then. Been told ever since I was a little kid that my grandpa Griggs did a year in the federal pen for running moonshine. Now, we're talking about in 1930s, people, when it was the Great Depression and everybody's running moonshine. And some people might think, well, why would you want to know that? And why would you care? That'd be like a black mark on the family. No, to me, it's like a badge of honor. And my grandpa died when I was 9 years old, so I never got the chance to ask him if all that was true. It's like, so if any of my Greg's cousins out there are my aunts that are still around, can tell me if that's true or not, I'd like to know. With that being said, if he passed his recipe down, because you know that's some old moonshiners, they all had their own recipe. If he passed his recipe down, I'd like to know that. And if he ever passed down how to do it, I'd like to know that too. I mean, heck, that's pretty cool if you ask me. You know, and it's like something that I think everybody should, you know, if their family did it, should do. You know, at least learn a little bit about it, especially if you can learn it from somebody in your family and get it passed down. And I don't want to get nobody in trouble, don't want to do nothing illegal. But it's like brewing beer. You can brew so much beer for yourself every year and you don't get in trouble for it. And it's like, if you're brewing your own beer, how much experimentation can you really do, you know, making just a batch or two a month? If that's, I'm not sure exactly how much you can make. So instead of keeping that information for yourself, you know, get a couple of buddies together and teach them how to do it. Because quite frankly, when you look some of this stuff up on the internet, and you can find anything out there on Google, sometimes it's intimidating, you know, to read it. But, you know, if your buddy gets you and said, hey man, I've been making my own beer for 5 or 6 years or however long, and walks you through the process, sometimes that stuff's not as hard as what you think it is. So, you know, if you know how to do it, get a couple buddies together, show them how to brew beer. And then what happens is now, instead of making one batch a month, between 3, 4, 5 buddies, you're making 3 or 4 or 5 batches of beer. Everybody's doing a little something different. You can sample each other's beer. Who knows, you might come up with the next great brewery. You know, craft brews are the way to go today. We're going to tie this into another little thing I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, but, you know, get out of your comfort zone with your craft brews and that kind of stuff. You might come up with the next great beer. And I bet if we put our mind to it, we could probably come up with a kabillion things that we could teach each other. And it's not just you teaching somebody. I mean, somebody might teach you. Let's go with the example of your kids. I said, my oldest son is a math whiz. I mean, his math abilities are way up here. And I always thought I was pretty good at math. Ain't shit. You know, I can't keep up with him on that kind of stuff. My middle child, youngest boy, is mechanically inclined. So we kind of connected on that. We've got an old El Camino that they all drove through high school that me and Zach piddled on, turned a ranch on here and there. And it's nothing he could hurt. So it's not my daily driver to get me back and forth to work. So it doesn't hurt nothing. That being said, if you need a way to connect with your kids, go buy an old muscle car or beater truck. You know, if it's got some dings in it, fill it full of Bondo. If it looks like shit, that's all right. We'll sand it out and start over again. See, maybe our next time it'll look a little better. It's a way to connect with your kids. Me and my youngest daughter, she's really into craft stuff. So she'll find something on Pinterest and we'll get out there in the wood shop and build it. My buddies, a couple of them like to send her links to stuff just because they want to hear me bitch about having to build it. But it's all right. I get out there and piss and moan in the wood shop. I enjoy harassing her about having to build it as much as I do building it, and I like building it. So it's a way to connect with your kids. But this Bumpkin Bob show, I've been told for years that I needed to do this. I have some of my rants and raves and pet peeves I needed to put down on film and let everybody else hear and see them. My oldest boy's the one that's driving that. He's the one that's got the technology base to be able to do this. He is an engineer. He's college trained. But he's teaching me something. You would not believe what this room looks like. This is just a bedroom in my house that he has transformed into a professional studio. We got lights and cameras and backdrops and give a little credit where credit's due. My daughter took this picture that's behind us. And then my son had it blown up. I mean, it's pretty cool. But, not only can you teach your kids something, but they can teach you something. And that gives you that connection with your kids. So don't be scared to try something new and to do something new with your kids. You might find out you'll learn something. Also, other people, your neighbors, co-workers, a lot of people, especially people that were raised here in the state of Arkansas and other places. I mean, the state of Arkansas has a lot of bodies of water. And I bet you $5 that almost everybody in this state is within 10 or 20 minutes of a good place to go catch some brim. And now, I call it bluegill fishing, but now when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about any of your little sunfish, your red ears, the government improved, shell crackers, whatever you want to call them, and whatever kind you're wanting to catch. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, if you do that, ask a coworker who may not have had a chance to fish. Maybe where he lived, there wasn't the kind of fishing that we got around here. And teach him how to go do a little bluegill fishing. What'll end up happening is he'll get hooked, or she'll get hooked, whoever. They'll end up buying them a little John boat, and the next thing you know, they're catching more fish than you are. But that gives you something. That gives you a connection. Some bullshit about who went fishing this weekend, where'd you go, what'd you catch. That being said, don't just teach them how to go put a cricket or a worm on a hook and catch some brim. Teach them how to clean them. And when I say teach them how to clean them, you're catching little sunfish, so don't fillet them. Don't get out your electric knife and try to fillet them. Teach them how to clean them like we all learned when we was kids. Scrape the scales, gut them, dehead them, and then teach them how to cook them and how to eat the bony little shits. Take them all the way through, and then the next thing you know, they're catching fish, and maybe y'all are getting together with the rest of your co-workers and having fish fries. Now, once they progress up past the bluegill and start catching crappie and catfish, or maybe some smallmouth bass, then get out the electric fillet knife and teach them how to fillet one. But make sure on the front end you're teaching them how to clean them the old-fashioned way, the way we all learned when we was a kid. But get out there, make a connection with your kids, make a connection with a coworker. And again, whether it's building furniture, maybe a cedar chest, or making hominy, canning pickles, whatever it is, ask your kids, ask your coworkers, grandkids, get your grandkids in, get them involved in that kind of stuff. And let's bring back some of these old ways of doing things and teach each other how to do this stuff. Whether it's brewing beer or canning pickles, we can all learn something new every day. Nobody's too old to learn. That's the truth. Now, one thing I want to do before I go into this next segment is I want to give a little plug to a place here in Siloam, and that's Hog City Grill. I truly love that place. Like to go down there and have a hamburger and some draft beer, which is what I'm going to talk about next. I got two things to talk about in this segment as far as draft beer, and that's the beer itself, I want to talk a little bit about that. And I want to talk a little bit about IDing people in these establishments. First thing, let's talk about the fun part. Let's talk about the beer itself. I truly love draft beer. I'm not a beer connoisseur, but it tastes better to me. When I go out to eat or go to a restaurant or just go to a pub, I do not understand people getting bottled or canned beer. I can have that at home. I can go buy it at a liquor store, take it home if that's what I want to do, and have bottled or canned beer. I could do it at home, but who wants to buy a whole keg of beer to have set in a kegerator to sit at your house? That's a lot of money investment there. So when I go out to a restaurant or a pub, I want to have draft beer. I want to have good, cold draft beer. And I'm going to give credit where credit's due to a man by the name of Dustin Terrell, who I used to work with. He lives over around Broken Arrow over in the Tulsa area now. But when I would go out somewhere or go to a pub, like a bunch of us go after work and have a beer, I usually got Coors Light on draft. And Dustin's like, Bob, you gotta get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try something different. Well, behold, I figured out by doing that, I like, and people probably still consider these domestics because they're really not like craft beer. They may have started out that way, I'm not sure. But I like Shiner Bock, which I know that's not a craft beer. That's been around since the early 1900s, 1940s, I think, or something, out of Shiner, Texas. But I like Shiner Bock. I like Blue Moon. I like Shock Top. And then there's a few others thrown in there here and there. But it's like I had to get out of my comfort zone to figure out that I like those. And I really do. So, again, back to giving Hog City Grill. That's a family-owned establishment. They have a great hamburger. They have cold draft beer. And they will take care of you. I mean, they get busy down there, and it's family-owned, so there's usually not a lot of people in there working. But, give them time, be patient, and they will take care of you. And you're going to get good food and good cold beer and good service. And just want to give them a plug because I really enjoy going down there. And you enjoy going someplace, or that you go someplace when you walk in and sit down and they go ahead and bring you a beer to the table because they know what you're going to drink. Or your daughter, her Dr. Pepper, whatever it happens to be. And especially if they ask you, do you need a menu, or are you just going to order from memory? Or you want the same thing you always get? Usually I say, no, I better look at a menu, and then I get the same thing I always get. Oh, well, that's just how shit happens. That being said, I'm going to talk about a pet peeve. And you're going to find out in the Bumpkin Bob show from time to time. We're going to talk about a pet peeve of mine. And because I have several. The one we're going to talk about today directly ties to going to a pub or a restaurant. And that's IDing. And it's people that have a problem with that. And especially the people that give their wait staff a hard time when they get asked to show their ID. I'm 52 years old. I know when I go in Buffalo Wild Wings that they have to look at my ID. It's company policy, or they do it because that's what alcohol, tobacco, and firearms says they should do. So I know they're going to want to look at my ID. I have it out before they ever come take my order. And it's like these people that go into an establishment, and when they find out, they're obviously over 21, but they have to show their ID, they get pissy about it. It's like, it's not the wait staff's fault. It's either they've been in trouble as far as the establishment has, or it's just a company policy. So don't give the wait staff a hard time. If you're going to go in and you're going to order beer or wine or a mixed drink, go ahead and get your damn driver's license out and just have it ready. And then that way you ain't, because all you're doing is holding up progress. You know, they're not going to bring you your beer or your drink until you show them your ID, so you might as well get it out. That being said, drink responsibly. When I go out somewhere, even if I know I'm only going to have 2 or 3 beers, I still take my daughter or one of my sons so they can drive me home because I don't drink and drive. That's just how it is. So drink responsibly when you drink. And have some good draft beer. And quit ordering damn bottled and canned beer in restaurants. That being said, in the past 6 months, I've went in 2 different national chain restaurants and asked, what do y'all have on draft? And we have bottled beer and a full bar. It's like, well, if you don't have draft beer, I'm not coming back. I don't care if you got the best food in the world. I'm not coming back. When I go out and sit down with my dinner, I don't want bottled beer. I can get bottled beer at home. I want draft beer. And if you're not going to carry draft beer, I'm not going to frequent your establishment. Simple as that. I'm not going to be one of your patrons. So to the restaurant chains that are out there that don't have draft beer, you might ought to look at getting draft beer. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's like that. To restaurant chains out there that carry bottle and canned beer, especially canned beer. Quit carrying canned beer. Jesus Christ. If they want canned beer, let them go to the liquor store and buy a 6-pack and go home and drink it. You know, let's have some good icy cold 16-ounce or 22-ounce draft beer glasses. You know what I'm saying? Something good. That's what I'm talking about. Because it's just a pet peeve of mine about the IDs. You know, it's like, let's get that ID out, be good with it, and quit bitching about it. Anyway, another thing I want to touch on today while we're touching on subjects is something that is going to be near and dear to everybody's heart in the state of Arkansas, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Arkansas Razorbacks. But more importantly, those of us that grew up in central Arkansas for the majority of the time, War Memorial Stadium. I'd heard a few months ago, and I need to check and see if I can find out anything else about this, that UALR was doing a feasibility study about getting a football team. And if anybody knows anything, please go to our email links and shoot me an email about this. As you know, as far as the taping of this show goes, in 2018, they haven't renewed the contract with War Memorial Stadium to have a game in Little Rock. And if you're like me, if you didn't go to a game in Little Rock, you probably wouldn't have got to go to a Razorback game. That being said, 2 games that I went to that stand out in my mind is, and it had to been in 1970, I think, and it was the first Razorback game I ever got to go to was in War Memorial Stadium. They played Wichita State. Well, Wichita State's plane had crashed, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the same year that Marshall's plane crashed, but it killed most of their starting football team. I think their head coach got killed. Some other members of their faculty. I mean, it was pretty devastating. And the Razorbacks played them in War Memorial Stadium. And I don't remember a lot of the game. I remember my sisters crying because, I mean, it was pretty touching. And a part that I had forgotten about was when the game was over, our players, instead of running back into the locker room, went across the field to shake hands and have some teammanship or sportsmanship, camaraderie, whatever you want to say, with the Wichita State players. I mean, and it had to have been very emotional for both teams. The second game I got to see was, or not, wasn't the only game, but the second game that stands out in my mind seeing at War Memorial Stadium was the Houston Cougars, and it had to have been the late 80s. I would say right around 89 or 90. Houston Cougars came to War Memorial Stadium with Andre Ware and the run and shoot. And I mean, nobody in the Southwest Conference had an answer for that thing at that time. What happened is the Razorbacks, knowing that they had to match Andre Ware, touchdown for touchdown, or Houston was going to run off with that game, they backed up and turned Quinn Grovey loose. And oh my God, War Memorial Stadium was rocking. Best Arkansas Razorback game I've ever seen. Whether, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's been on TV or anything, best game ever. I mean, they lit it up. And it was awesome. It really was. And that is part of the reason I have such a strong tie to War Memorial Stadium. That being said, I hope UALR gets a football team. I mean, I hope they get a football team and have their home games in War Memorial Stadium. I hate to see that stadium set empty and only the state playoff championship game to be played there. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to get some concerts in that venue or whatever, but that's football stadium. We need to be playing football there, and I would love to see UALR do that. That being said, maybe Arkansas State can come down there and play a game. I mean, that'd be great. If we could get UALR a football team and then get UALR and Arkansas State playing every year. And then they can point up here at Fayetteville and go, look, there's 2 other teams in the state of Arkansas. Y'all need to come down here and compete. I mean, that would be great if we could get the Razorbacks to play A-State or UALR if they get a football team in War Memorial Stadium. So if you're out there, especially some of you people who might be watching this from Central Arkansas, and you can give us an update on how that's going, we would love to hear that and get that put on. That being said, I've heard some of the sports people up here talking, and they kind of alluded to some stuff, and I'm going to take it maybe a step farther as far as the economics. Arkansas Razorbacks need to step back and think about pulling that game from Central Arkansas. It's like, if they pull that game and UALR does get their own football team, what does that do to Arkansas's revenue in 5, 10, 15 years? I mean, does it, when people in Central Arkansas, especially the people that are on a budget, start buying UALR merchandise instead of Razorback merchandise, does it affect the U of A any? I mean, I hate to say this, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, but you can't afford a coach now that can compete in the SEC. What are you going to do if you lose a bunch of your revenue because you've turned your back on the Central Arkansas fans? And I'm telling you right now, people up here, that's kind of the way the people from Little Rock feel every time you pull a game from us, that you're turning your back on us. It's like you don't need our money anymore is what you're saying, but I think it's going to end up with more of an economic impact than what people actually think it's going to. So I think the U of A really needs to think about that as far as economics go. And to me, I think there would be nothing better than Arkansas playing A-State every year at War Memorial Stadium. I don't understand why we pay other teams to come in here and send that money out of state when Arkansas State could use that $1 million payday for playing Arkansas every year, other than the fact we go back to certain people that used to be at the U of A and probably still have a lot of influence want one state, one team, and they didn't want A-State to get any credit. So I think we need to get past that now, and that could be a big economic boost there, not only for War Memorial Stadium, but keep merchandise revenue coming to the Arkansas Razorbacks. I think they really, really need to think about that a little bit before they just pull games. Again, that's just my take on things. Other people are going to have their own opinions, and that's fine. And I don't want to step on anybody's toes, so to speak. But let's think about these things before we actually pull the trigger. And step back and think: do we really want to pull that last game from Little Rock? I mean, I understand they're not wanting to pull the game from Dallas because that's recruiting in Texas is a big thing, and they like playing A&M there at a neutral stadium. But there again, if you're going to keep playing A&M in a neutral stadium because you think it helps recruiting, it's only going to help recruiting if you win one every now and then. And we haven't beat A&M since they came into the SEC, so that's something that needs to be looked at pretty close itself. It's like we need a win there, guys, on that. Today, we have kind of touched on a lot of stuff. We covered our job site tale, which was about the Naturals ballpark and my daughter. We covered a little bit about my dad on a couple of different subjects. We touched on the Natural Bridge of Arkansas. That being said, one other thing I want to mention is I talked about me and my youngest boy working on the El Camino. My oldest boy and him both drove that car during high school. And at some point here on the Bumpkin Bob show, we're going to do some segments and redo that old El Camino so that we can start driving it again. And when we get into that, I'll give you the story then of how I actually came by that El Camino. My sisters truly love this story because it is classic Bobby Dean, which is my dad's name. It's just classic Bobby Dean, how I came about that. And it just, especially my oldest sister, it just tickles her every time we talk about it. So when we get to the point that we can redo that El Camino, we'll tell you that story and let y'all laugh about it a little bit too. It's a cute little story. So we touched on that. We talked about your Arkansas Razorbacks. I'm probably not the greatest Arkansas Razorback fan, but I am a fan. Don't want to have stepped on people's toes too much, but as much as I'm a fan of Arkansas Razorbacks, I'm a big fan of War Memorial Stadium. And it's like, if there's anything we can do to where they're playing football in that stadium, I think we should do it. I mean, if UALR can get a football team, I think that would be awesome. Now, before we close out today, I also want to mention to hit us up on Facebook, hit those email links, and get us your job site tales. I've said this a couple times already. I want to hear your job site tales. If it's funny, nobody got hurt, nobody got bullied to shit or whatever, I mean, I want to hear your job site tales. We're going to try to get those read on our show. We want y'all to be a part of this show, not just a viewer. I mean, we want to get interactive here. At some point, I am hoping, because I've already been asked, there's people out there that know this show's going to take place, been asked about merchandise. I'm hoping at some point we will have some t-shirts or hoodies or ball caps or something available here on our website as we get going a little bit. We're still kind of working on our own logo, trying to come up with that a little bit. And as we actually hammer that down, then we'll try to get something out there as far as merchandise, coffee cups, something. Be kind of cool if I could get a coffee cup here on set so I can drink some coffee while we're talking. Now, I have been accused of being able to ramble for a long time, and I'll be honest with you, I can feel my voice kind of going. So I'm probably going to need to get off here. But before we go, on a sad note, I want to send condolences out to my niece and nephew. And yes, I do call her my niece. Her mother passed away this week. And I just want them to know that their family up here in Northwest Arkansas, that our prayers and thoughts are with them. We do love them. And if they need anything, they can give us a call, because unlike y'all, they do have my number. So anyway, just keep us in mind. Make sure you visit our website. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. You know, we really want to hear from you. Hit them email links up. If you like what you heard today, let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see, what you don't want to see. Again, we'll try to have a couple of different email links up. One for the job site tales, maybe an email link for the day trips if we can get that started. So make sure you keep following us here. And for all of us here at Bumpkin Media and the Bumpkin Bob Show, we wish you a happy Saturday, a good weekend, and a great week. And hopefully by the end of this week, you'll have another job site tale for us.